You're listening to a 58 Ember production.
Hi there, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Completely Fucking Clueless. My name is Audrey Jean Flowers.
And my name is Sarah Alice Liddy, and we both use she, her pronouns.
And this week we are joined by a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Sydney Cason. You might have seen me on TikTok, and I also use she, her pronouns.
Slay!
Slay. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. Yeah, both of us are, big fans of your content and have been super excited to get you on and talk to you. We've talked to, I believe she's a friend of yours, Nat Cass, before. So we're making our way around the girly gays on TikTok.
I love it. I called her before this and I was like, give me the lowdown. What? I've never been on a podcast before. How did you feel? And she was like, I'm obsessed with them. You're gonna have a great time. Sweet. Yeah. She was like, you don't need to prep. You're fine. You're in good hands. Great. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, happy first podcast recording. I know it can be such a weird thing. I remember when we were interviewed for the first time, sitting on the other end of it, and I was like, what is going to happen? Will I have these good answers that people want to listen to? But our audience is super chill, super cool. And so, yeah, they'll love you.
I feel like most of our context of doing interviews is for work, which is very different than being on a podcast. For work, you need to be really professional and prepared. For these, it's just questions about your life. And whatever you say, there's truly no wrong answer. And it's not
Literally.
There's a job at the end you're trying to get.
It's so true.
There's literally no stakes. There's negative stakes.
So great. That's exactly what I want to hear.
Yeah. Okay, so before we even get into the questions, I just want to start off by saying this. Your cat is a star.
Winnie is a star. She doesn't even know she's famous.
Literally, when watching your vlogs, prepping for today, I am just obsessed with how she talks back to you. And I was showing my partner, and my partner was obsessed with the cat.
I recently asked my Instagram audience, I did a poll. I was like, if I do merch, what kind of merch do you guys want to see? And they were all, I was expecting them to say something along the lines of, positive quotes, you're so positive, whatever, something queer related. No, 95% of them were like, we want Winnie on a t-shirt. And I'm like, okay, so you guys, you guys aren't here for me. You're here for the cat. And honestly, Great news. I need to put more of her on my TikTok,
It's
honestly.
such a human instinct, though. I was at work yesterday, and these two cute dogs came in, and suddenly I did not care that I was getting paid to do something. That did not matter to me. What mattered to me was hanging out with those dogs.
Exactly. Yes, you get it.
100. The pets always win.
I've got priorities. They're not necessarily good ones, but I do have them.
I would argue they're good ones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, now we're going to shift and just talk about sexuality. I think something that's been nice for Audrey and I to connect with other people in the queer community on TikTok is their coming out journey, how it was for them, especially because I think so many people, there's so many different experiences, and something I think our audience likes to hear are those different experiences. So we're curious, about your coming out journey, and can you walk us through what you were going through internally before you decided to publicly come out, and then how it was, publicly coming out to friends and family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, like many people in their mid-20s, I feel as if TikTok did have something to do with their coming out. I chronically dated men my whole life, and I still consider myself a serial relationship dater type of person. I had just ended a 3-year relationship with a guy, and I was dating around, and I was talking to this guy I was just casually seeing, and he had asked me, I don't even remember the context of what we were talking about, but I remember this part specifically because he asked me, do you think you could ever see yourself kissing a woman? Because I had never kissed a girl at this point. And I was like, yeah, probably. And he's like, what about having sex? And I was like, yeah, probably. And he's like, oh, so you're gay? Oh, so you're bi? And I was like, no. I had never even thought about it because of compet and how I had been in relationships with men and enjoyed being in relationships with men. Actually, enjoyed is a strong word, but been in relationships with men. And I went home that night and I took a "Are you gay?" quiz online, and it told me that I was.
Iconic.
If you're taking an "Are you gay?" quiz, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to take that quiz. You're probably bi. But yeah, it told me I was bisexual, and my mind was blown. I was like, no fucking way. So after that, I was like, I should explore this side of myself. I'm newly single. Why not? And just figure out this other part of me. And so I switched my Hinge profile to women. And the first girl I went on a date with was my now ex-fiance. Like, she was the first person I met up with, first person I kissed, first woman I was in a relationship with. And so most of my context of like my coming out experience and being with women has been with her. But also along that time, the whole TikTok thing, like I had started getting thirst traps of women on my TikTok, and that was like my whole feed. And I was like, I'm into this. I need to figure this out.
I feel like TikTok, the first thing they figured out about me was that I was gay. And I was like, am I way more gay than I thought I was? Because like TikTok just so immediately was like, we see you.
We are in charge of our own For You pages. So
that's the actual answer.
Yeah.
What was going on that like first date? Like, were you nervous? Did you like tell her like, oh, this is my first date with a woman?
Yeah, I told her when we were messaging back and forth. I'm a very open person. I have been my entire life. I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm feeling and thinking. And I told her right away. I was like, I have never been with a woman. I know there's like preconceived notions around like going on dates with bisexual women, with women who are exploring this side of them. I was like, if you are looking for something serious, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not where I'm at. She was like, no, I'm down to just, casually hang out, like get to know you, whatever. It's like, great. So we had plans to actually go to brunch on a Sunday the night before, which brunch as a first date is so weird, but whatever. The night before on Saturday, we were both going out drinking with friends, and we were texting each other. And I found out later that she had switched where she was originally going so that she could end up at the same place as me. But that the first time we actually hung out was out dancing with both of our sets of friends. And I actually loved that. Now thinking back, like a first date when you're just sitting down looking at each other is like, there can be a lot of pressure. So it was nice to actually just be like dancing, have a drink, and yeah, it was great. I was sweating though. I was freaking out.
No, literally, that's me. So I knew my partner prior to us like picking up our relationship. We met at summer camp when we were 12 and 13. They were my first kiss. So we had like a history, but I remember they lived in Boston at the time and we were going to school in North Carolina. I will never forget like walking into their apartment for the first time, and I literally just like collapsed. I was like, I just need to like breathe for a second. I was like, I'm literally like so nervous. Because similarly to you, and I think that's like what resonates with your story, like with mine, is that I mean, technically, from like ages 12 to 15, I was having a lot of like queer experiences, and then I like stuffed it down. I was like, forget that, like never mind. And then I, similarly to you, just dated a lot of men, and so it kind of like came out of nowhere, and I was like, I don't know how this is gonna like work out. I think the pandemic was just like making me like think so much about like regretting my life without experimenting. So I really relate to that a lot. And I think it's also nice to hear from your experience, because I think something that like, Audrey has talked a lot about is this like nervous energy around these like expectations or stereotypes with like bisexual women, or like, hey, I haven't had many like dating experiences with women or queer experiences. So like, will people accept me?
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
still feel that way, having only been with
Yeah.
one person. And I've
Sure.
been part of this community, sure, for a few years, but I really have only dated one person. And so in a lot of ways, I'm still, in the last 5 months, I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, I feel so behind and so confused and
Yeah.
just, what am I doing? So I totally get that.
I hear so many people on TikTok talk about like feeling behind in like being queer, and it's like so funny because like it's something I like also like I've been out for a very long time. Like
Yeah.
I never even really formally came out. I think people just kind of knew. No one can remember me coming out to them.
I love that. I love that.
But like I still constantly feel behind, and like I think there's very much this concept of not feeling like gay enough. And I mean that has been like something wonderful. I think like TikTok has provided the ability for people to find communities and connect, but it's like so funny that like it's like your sexuality is only defined by you. Like no one else should have a say in it. And yet we all feel like we're behind at something that it's like it just is who you are.
Absolutely.
How have you sort of like what have your experiences with that feeling been, and like how have you sort of tried to like find your niche in the community, like even though sometimes it can feel ostracizing almost in a way?
Yeah, TikTok is, it's a double-edged sword. I have found so much of myself in other people's content, which is why I started making content myself, because I got so much from the queer community that I thought to myself, I could add to this Discord, and hopefully in a positive way. But with feeling behind and questioning things, like I think for me, a lot of it, and I talk about this, I've talked about it a few times on my page, is labels. And as you kind of, and I've found this just to be true for myself, but based off of people commenting on my posts, I've found other people experience this too. As you kind of go through your like queer lore, your queer history, like the time you feel part of this community, you're figuring yourself out. You just start to like question labels more and more, and like, am I this? Am I, or even not even just like a label of your sexuality, like bisexual versus lesbian versus queer versus pan, what have you. Your gender is thrown in there. Like, am I questioning, my gender in this? And I think what I have learned, honestly, is that every single person who is on this journey of like figuring out themselves and figuring out who they are in the queer community, like none of us know what we're doing, and that's okay. Like you're saying, it's just accepting yourself for where you are in the moment right now, and feeling okay knowing that you can change your mind and that you can evolve. And it's tough because the double-edged sword thing, like being someone who puts that content out on TikTok, I have referred to myself as bisexual and lesbian multiple times. And I am trying to figure out what I am, like all of us. And when you put out certain labels and you throw yourself out there for people to judge and comment on, I've received not a lot, but I've received some backlash from people being like, well, you're saying this, now you're saying this, what are you? I don't think you're this. And it opens up this door for people to kind of tell you what you are. So that also adds to the confusion sometimes. But I think, honestly, what I've learned from TikTok and from other people in the queer community is 99% positive and has helped me in figuring out what I am, who I want to be.
Yeah, I think like coming out is like just like such this big moment that like doing it in the first place just like feels like a step. And then I feel like came this whole like, all right, so like actually like what am I, like what am I feeling, who am I feeling? And I agree, I think it confuses people. Like I have family members that when I first came out I was like, I just like don't really know what my label is right now. I think I'm just gonna like be labelless. And then I was like, no, I'm definitely probably bisexual. And now they're like, so you're bisexual? What does that mean? How's that different from this? And I'm like, guys, like it's really not that deep. Like just like calm down. Like it can change, it migrates. Like, people change and evolve. Like think about the people that come out when they're like 60, like they identified as straight for like 60 years, like, and it changes. So I feel that. Yeah, labels are hard. They're like sticky. I can never get like wrap my finger around which one I like the best.
But people are so desperate for you to have an answer for them.
Yeah.
And like people like want it so badly. And like even within the queer community, like people want it so much and put so much weight on these labels. And I love what you said about like questioning your like sexuality also like brings in that aspect of like gender of like a big thing of like getting older for me is realizing like, oh, like we as a society have weighted gender so much, and like
So
gender
much.
is and I really wish we didn't. I wish we lived in a
Same.
society that is significantly less gendered, because it is actually insane once you start noticing how gendered everything is.
Mm-hmm.
But like we all talk about within the queer community about how like sexuality and gender is fluid, and yet people seem really have a struggle to actually embrace that and like the
Absolutely.
practicality of like what it means. I my favorite way of explaining things recently has just been like, people are hot. I like hot people.
I said that verbatim on one of my last videos. I was like, I think I'm just into hot people, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Like,
Yeah.
take with that what you will. I love it.
Literally, like you're attracted to who you're attracted to, and like that's that. There doesn't need to be like so many labels and questions and all of that stuff. Because that's where it just like gets like.
You also wouldn't do that to a straight person. You wouldn't be like, oh, so like who would you like to fuck? That's not a question you would ask a straight person.
No.
Gosh.
No.
Like,
I-
what is the specific type of
So
person that
true.
you would like to have intercourse with? That is
Right.
not a question we ask to straight people.
Right.
But it's one we expect of gay people.
Well, I think it also goes back to historically how queer people have been historically hypersexualized. And
Yeah.
I have
Mhm.
felt that an insane amount since coming out. Like I feel
Mm.
and I see it online too. I feel like there's just so much hypersexuality in this community, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like it's a bad thing when people who are not part of this community are, hypersexualizing us. But I don't know. I think yeah, I everyone's just into hot people who they deem hot, and we should just leave it at that. People should just move on. Why does it matter,
Literally.
Yeah.
Have you, like, with your followers in your community and also ours, like, I think, people come to us and, like, they're trying to navigate this, like, weird, space of trying to figure it out. Like, what has been your advice to people when they've come to you on your platform and said, like, hey, I'm really confused and I'm navigating this. Like, please help.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a lot of young women between the ages of 15 and 18 who DM me asking for advice and
Yeah.
telling me how I've provided a place for them to feel like themselves, which is amazing. But yeah, a lot of the questions are, how did you know that you were gay? How did you navigate telling your family and friends? And there are still people my age and older who come to me and ask me that. How do you navigate telling your friends and family they're going to see you differently? And it's really hard because I don't know. I am not in the business of trying to give people bad advice. And I don't like giving blanket advice to people
Yeah.
because everyone's situation and scenario is so different. I don't know if your family is extremely conservative, Republican. I don't know if your family is more moderate. I don't know anything about you or your friends' family, your relationships. And I would hate to give someone advice that then gets them like kicked out of their house
Yeah.
or whatever, and that's put back on me. So I think generally what I try to tell people when they're asking me how they come out to friends and family, how they know if they're gay. One, you don't need to know right now. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself in this process. It's really, really fucking cool that you're taking the time to do some introspective work and figure out who you are on this floating rock. But also when it comes to telling people, again, there's no rush. If you will know when it's the right time, and you will know
Yeah.
when it feels appropriate. And I think we put so much internalized pressure on ourselves to I know this thing about me. Now I have to tell everyone I know. And
Yeah.
my hope is that our society evolves enough to where, like you, Audrey, we just don't have to come out anymore. Like, we just get to be ourselves. So I don't know. I try to give very general advice of just give yourself some extra love right now and patience, because it's confusing, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, the best advice that you can give, because I remember, through your content, hearing your story, especially with telling your parents, because I had a very similar situation where it was like, I knew that they were never going to throw me out or anything. So it was really me like feeling okay enough to tell them in the first place. And that took like 10 years. So like it really is, like you said, your own individual experience. And yeah, I loved that. I love that advice. I do think that you have to be gentle with yourself during that time, because I feel like you really aren't. You feel like all this pressure to say something and do something about it when you don't need to if you don't want to.
I also love what you said about safety, and like that is a big thing of like I'm so lucky, like grew up in Massachusetts in a family of a lot of gay kids came before me. People were pretty unfazed by me, but like my dad's side of the family is Jehovah's Witness. I've had a couple cousins come
Wow.
out as gay and they got excommunicated, and one of them was under 18, and it like
Wow.
resulted in a whole thing like where we had to get like child services involved, and like he had to end up living with another family to finish high school, and like that
Mm,
was really traumatizing
It's
for him.
extremely traumatizing. Yeah.
And like he was just under 18, so it was like a whole complicated process. And like I'm so sorry that like I feel like it's horrible that he had to go through that. And as much as like safety was something to take into account, like it went badly but it could have gone worse, and like
yeah.
we're lucky that it ended up that way and not worse. And like some people aren't safe to come out to.
They're not. No. A lot of
And like
Yeah.
people aren't
that's
safe to come out to.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot with my partner, even feeling like certain spaces, like, I mean, for example, we were at Henrietta Hudson last night. There, I feel 100% comfortable to do anything I want. But it's interesting when we go to different spaces, like, like kind of adjusting what you do and who you are based on that space. Like, I remember over the summer, we were in this like sports bar on the Jersey Shore, and after, like the next day, I was like, hey, like, sorry, I maybe wasn't like as touchy feely as I usually am. Like, for some reason, like, I just noticed how many like straight men were around me and was feeling really like intimidated by that. And Olivia was like,
Yeah.
no, I like totally get that. I felt the exact same way.
It can be so scary,
Really?
genuinely.
It's so interesting.
And that's also why I'm so careful with advice, because I have had so much privilege in my coming
Hmm.
out
Same.
experience, because I came out older, so I didn't have to, experience the bullying that could potentially come with coming out in middle school, high school, even college, of being ostracized.
Yeah.
I'm also very straight passing, so I am not walking around experiencing what other people in our community are likely experiencing. I had my parents, who I knew before even telling them, were allies, same with my brother, and I had built a community here in DC of people who I knew were also going to accept me. And I live in a very queer city. So like
Mhm.
all of the stars were aligned for me and feeling comfortable to come out, which is amazing, and I wish every single queer person had that. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize that, which is also why when people ask me for advice in that respect, I'm like, I have no idea what 90% of the people in our community have to go through, because I was so lucky.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, shifting gears a little bit, I think how I found your content, and I'm not
I'm
sure,
so
Audrey, how
curious.
you found Sydney. Yeah. Well, I started following you right before you had called off your engagement. And then I honestly will be real. I will never forget when I saw like, on TikTok that you had called it off. And I was like actually shocked.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my goodness, like this person I started following, is going through this hard thing. So, it's been like 5 or 6 months since May. And we're curious, like, how has your healing journey been going? I don't think we talk about breakups a lot on this podcast. So I think this is a great way to kind of navigate that discussion.
Yeah. It has been equally the best 5 months in my life as it has been the
Yeah.
worst. The
Mm-hmm.
amount of growth I have had and self-discovery and realizing how resilient I am and how much support I have around me in other aspects of my life has been so beautiful, and I would never have experienced that without the breakup. but equally, I mean, and I think when you guys sent over, the questions, I don't know how you guys
Mhm.
edit this, so feel free to edit this however you want. I had not publicly come out with saying why we broke up yet. And I just dropped
Yeah.
like 2 days ago.
Oh, I know. I
Yeah.
literally was oh, did I send it to you, Audrey? I was like, "Wait,
Sarah
I"
immediately called me.
because I up until that point, like, I knew you hadn't said anything about it, so I didn't wanna,
Yeah.
I was never gonna be like, "Tell us why."
Right.
And so
Right.
when I saw I was like, "Oh my goodness, Audrey, like, did you just see?"
Yeah. So now that the world kind of knows, that
Yeah.
there was an affair involved, I feel like I can talk about it a little bit more authentically,
Yeah.
and real, because I mean, I feel like it's a small percentage of people who are in relationships where they're engaged and the other person cheats while they're engaged. That's like pretty rare.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, to have that experience like within the queer community, I was like, I'm the only one experiencing this, but no.
Mm.
I have had so many people reach out to me saying, I have never seen this kind of like representation of, what has happened in the queer community between two women. Your space, like, it feels even more safe to me now. I feel so seen and understood, and that's beautiful. So it's like there are so many. Obviously, it was heartbreaking. It's still heartbreaking, but what has come out of it too, I try to always like have perspective on things. So
Yeah.
really beautiful. I don't know.
One
Yeah.
of
I
the
think we'll Oh, sorry, go ahead, Audrey.
one of the like first things of your like that you spoke about that like really connected with me was when you were talking about how like, oh, when I first started dating women, I thought that women would be better than men. And I do in certain ways think they are. But I also think like a really okay, but
Yeah, I
also
agree.
like I think a big thing that's not really talked about is like gay people can be toxic too. And like this is something we've actually talked about on the podcast with like Queer Love Ultimatum. Like as much as like dating shows are very dumb, I think that was really important and big in showing like gay people can be bad too. Gay people can be abusers. Like gay people
Yeah.
can be super toxic and bad too. Like they're also
Mhm.
people. We are not like even in movies like you used to see like the gay people like in an overcompensation were always showed as like perfect at everything, and it's like no, they're people who have problems and do bad things as well.
Mm.
And
Yes.
yeah.
It is hard. It was a hard realization. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like you're saying, I have much more enjoyed dating women than I have men. It's nuanced, right? But yes, I have learned that there are shitty people everywhere. Doesn't really matter
Yeah.
how you identify. Like people are just good or bad,
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's like such a hard situation. I feel like, I've had an experience before where somebody like betrays your trust in that way, and it's such a unique kind of pain. um it's something that like you never like, it's out there, but you hope it doesn't happen to you, and then it happens, and like, it can adjust your trust. So like in the last like 6 months, like moving forward into dating like new people, how have you feel like, do you feel like there's something, a shift in the way that you trust people, or not really, like you're able to give it out?
I have always been a very trusting person.
Yeah.
This time, however, was so out of left field. If you would
Mm.
have asked me a day before I found out if she would ever have an affair, I would have bet my entire life savings that she would not. Like I
Wow.
had zero clue, zero clue. So it's tough because now I sit back and I am overanalyzing, hyperanalyzing every single interaction I've ever had with her.
Mm.
And it makes you question when you're cheated on, it makes you kind of question your own instincts and your own
Mhm.
ability to like see other people, your own
Yeah.
intuition. And that's really it's world shaking or earth shattering, like for your own perception of how you go about your life. So going into my next relationships, I'm taking it very slow. I know there's this common theme with women, queer women, the U-Haul lesbians.
Yeah.
And I did do that with my ex. And I don't regret it by any means. I don't regret any part of what I gave or put into that relationship. However, moving forward, I think there's something so beautiful in taking things slow and really figuring out if you jive with that other person on a bunch of different levels, like really get to know them before you go down that path. But I think I'm genuinely looking for someone next. Well, I'm not looking for anyone right now, but whoever I am, when I get to that point, someone who is consistently wanting to put in the work on learning who they are, because you can't show up in a relationship and be there for another person if you're not taking time, not every day, but just like checking in with yourself, reflecting on who you are and how you show up in the world. I think it all starts with you and how what you're rooted in, what your morals are. So yeah, I think just someone who also takes the time to reflect on who they are is a biggie.
Yeah, that is so key in relationships. Like prior to my current relationship, I'd been in a lot of unhealthy, love bomby like relationships with men. And so I remember when I first got into my relationship with my partner, I hated how slow it was moving. I was like, why aren't you in love with me? Like, why aren't we all over each other? Like all of these things.
Literally, yes.
Yeah, it was like weird. I was like, this is so weird. And now, like 3 years later, I'm like so happy that it ended up that way because it's given us so much space to like you said, really get to know each other. And then navigating, how much you have to like also work on yourself in a relationship and really like see how the different parts of you are impacting the relationship. Like that has been so much a part of my current relationship is like learning who I am and how the things that I do affect the relationship. And it is fucking hard. Like
It's
it's
so
so
hard.
hard. Because you don't think
Absolutely.
about that when you think of a relationship. Like you're not really
Mhm.
thinking like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna have to like work on myself to like be a great person for this relationship. And then you start seeing the parts of you like quote unquote ruin the relationship a little bit. And then you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, like I got some work to do.
And like this saying's thrown around a lot, but like, how the hell are you gonna love someone else if you don't love yourself? And like,
Yeah.
that's honestly a big place where I'm at. Like, my mom a lot asks why I'm not really dating, and it's like, I came off of being like really, really depressed for like 6 months, like
Yeah.
the worst I've ever been, and like I'm working on rebuilding my life, and I'm kind of a complete hot mess right now. I don't have it in me to like, there's a responsibility and like you owe something to a partner. Like I don't have the bandwidth or like the anything right now to like be responsible to someone else. Like right now I need to just be able to be selfish and just think about myself. And I think there's a lot of pressure put on, I think especially women, to not be alone. And like I've watched
Yes.
so many friends who like are perpetually in relationships and don't give
Yeah.
themselves the opportunity to like figure out who they are and what they like, or like work on their own shit, honestly. Like if you're busy all the time and you never have to sit still with yourself, you're never going to deal with the stuff that keeps piling up at the back door.
You have to be okay being alone with your own thoughts. And if you're not okay being alone with your own thoughts, how do you bring someone else into that? It's so valid. So valid.
Yeah. Yeah. So from these like last couple of months, you talked about it a little bit in the last question, but what are you feeling like, like what have you maybe like let me rephrase this. What do you feel like, you've learned in these last couple of months? What are you taking with you like moving forward?
Yeah. It's a great question. I have learned that I am resilient as fuck. I kind of felt like this before, but when you're in a stable relationship for 3 years, I mean, you meet challenges in life together. So when you are met with facing something head on your own and you survive it, like sitting there canceling wedding vendors and telling people you know and love, like, this is not happening and this is why, like, it's traumatic. It's like really it's financially traumatic. It's emotionally traumatic. It's all sorts of things. But I think that I've also learned about myself that, like, how do I word this? The ego work that I did on myself during my relationship proved extremely beneficial in coming out of it. The last few years, I've really prioritized trying to break down my ego and how it controls everything. And coming out of this, I forgave her within like 48 hours of finding out what she did.
Yeah.
Because in my brain, and really processing my ego and trying to like go about the world, not making everything about me, I'm like, this had nothing to do with me. This was a decision that she made. And yes, it has consequences. It has a ripple effect. It's hurtful. It's traumatic, but also perspective. Like, I'm so grateful this happened before we got married. I'm so grateful that this that this happened, and like I'm not with someone now who, even thought about doing that to me.
Yeah.
Who was okay doing that to me. Trying to find gratitude in everything. Like I got to see, like I mentioned earlier, I got to see how my friends and family truly stepped up for me in crisis. Like out of this world were incredible. So I've learned that the work I continuously did in my relationship, which is what I'm hoping I find in my next relationship that someone else is willing to do, just proved extremely beneficial to my healing process.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about like that ego work that you were doing for those 2 years? I'm super interested to hear about it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have heard of Eckhart Tolle. He
I haven't.
has written quite a few books on the
Okay.
ego. Um, Oprah Winfrey is obsessed with him, which means I'm obsessed with him. But
Cool.
he's fascinating, and he talks about how your ego really rules everything you do. When you're in a conversation with someone and they say something that like triggers you, that's your ego response of either wanting to be right or wanting to like be seen in a certain way or whatever that trigger is. That's your ego and how you want to present yourself to the world. And I have taken time over the last few years to really focus on when I am triggered by something and not responding, and like sit back and really process not just like what I'm going to say next, but like why do I feel a certain way by that? And do I have to feel that way about it? So just like breaking down, it helps you break down your emotions, because oftentimes like our thoughts aren't really how we feel. Like I can sit here and say like I can look in the mirror and be like I'm ugly. Like where did I learn that? And that's not real. That's not a true thing. So breaking down my thoughts and my triggers, that kind of stuff, like, and journaling about it. It's like a rewiring of your brain almost. I don't know. It's
That's
kind
so
of hard to
interesting.
explain.
No,
No,
I
I
love
love
that.
this.
Yeah, same. That's so interesting. Especially like in a relationship, like thinking about it, like you do have these like things that like trigger you that or make you feel a certain way or like I know I've like had experiences like where my partner has done something and I've had this like emotional response that I like did not expect to have. I'm like, why
Yeah.
is this making me upset? Like this should not make me upset. So that's a really interesting thing to do.
Yeah. It's changed my life, honestly. It's changed how I show up for myself, like within my relationship, with my friends, with my family.
Yeah.
It's it's awesome.
How do you feel like it's like kind of changed you? Like was there like like what was the prior version to the version that you are now?
Yeah, I think it's ever evolving. But for me personally,
Mm.
I think before I learned about breaking down your ego and ego work, I was a very reactive person. And I was the
Mm.
type of person like I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I'm going to, whatever in the moment, I'm going to just say how I feel and like that's good because it's honest, it's true, it's how I'm feeling in the time, whatever. Now I'm slower to react to things. Like someone will say something and if it triggers me or they do something that triggers me, like example, if, before this, living with someone, if they would leave their stuff everywhere, it would upset me. Like a mess upsets me. Instead of in the moment being like, you need to clean this up. What are you doing? Just being very reactive and like confrontational. It's like taking a step back now, processing what kind of place is that person in, that they are, okay, leaving their stuff around. How do I want to handle this? It's really just like slower to react. And I feel like it saved me from, I don't know, uncomfortable encounters or things that I wish I wouldn't have said. And it helps me be more intentional and authentic with what I do say to other people, which is why the podcast was like, being on here was a little nerve-wracking for me, because you don't have as much time to like really think about your responses. And it's why people, when they've asked me if I want to make a podcast, I'm like, I don't know that I do. I feel like I want to write a book instead, because I have the time to actually like authentically and intentionally write down what I want to say.
Totally.
Well, if you ever did want to start a podcast, the good news is in editing, you can cut out the gaps if you need to think.
So true. So true.
Literally, we'll be in Audrey's apartment, and sometimes like we will take these big gaps and be like, like, what do I want to say here? And then we'll just like cut it.
That's so
or
true.
Sometimes just one of us will need to go to the bathroom and we're like, okay, we'll pause for a sec.
That's so valid.
That's the joy of editing. But I loved what you said. I do think like the world like really does need people like being more thoughtful, and I think it is really fucking hard to slow down in a world that is so fast paced, but like truly like we could all use a little more thoughtfulness.
Yeah. Thoughtfulness is a great word.
No,
yeah.
True. That is. I feel like that's something that I've learned being in my relationship, especially coming from like other like unhealthier ones. I feel like I learned to be reactive because I felt like that was like, it was helping me stay safe, was to be reactive. And so I remember coming into this relationship, like being very reactive, and my partner is so not that person. Like they do not yell, they're chill. Like they're like, let's have a conversation. They've been in therapy since they were a child. So like I really had to like adjust and be like, okay, like there's no reason to be reactive here. And I love what you had to say also about like thinking about why the other person may be leaving their stuff all over the place. Like, what place are they at in their life? Because I know that was hard for me at a time as well, to think about like, okay, like, let me give some empathy to this person as to why they may be behaving this way. And it definitely does shift the way that you feel, maybe some of the negative emotions you may feel toward what that person is doing. Like you step back and be like, oh shit, like they're going through a hard time. Like maybe
this is not personal.
Saying this. Right. Exactly. Literally. So I really resonate with that.
So much more of the time, things have nothing to do with us. And we always think that everything's about us. And most of the time, things have nothing to do with us.
99% of the time, they have nothing to do with us.
Literally. Well, shifting into a little bit like of your single life in the last like 6 months, like kind of, we were talking about this at the beginning, but how has it been to really like, be dating for the first time in the queer community? Like, are you facing any of these biases? Are you having a great time? Like, just tell us all about it.
Yeah. It's been fun. It has been fun. Also confusing. It's been a lot of emotions. I think I went like balls to the wall 1 month after the breakup, because I was like, I deserve this. Like, I've been done wrong. I get to go explore and meet women. And I was just like talking to anyone who wanted to talk to me. I was like, yes, this is great. But then after like a month of that, and a particular like, I don't even want to call it situationship, because it was like 72 hours. Like, let's be real with myself. Delusionship. But it felt very intimate.
I've had a
to
lot
me.
of those. I've had a lot of
Yeah.
delusionships. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that word, delusionship.
It
Yeah.
felt very, and it was very intimate for,
Mhm.
the short amount of time
Yeah.
it was. And it like kind of really fucked me up. How it
Mm.
ended with just like, yep, I'm not interested in you anymore out of nowhere. So after that happened, I was like, okay, now I'm like grieving this delusionship and a failed engagement. I need to relax. So
Mm.
I started this like 75 queer. It's like
Ooh.
75 hard, but where I just don't date masked lesbians for 75 days. And so I'm currently like I
Off
was like
limits.
off limits, my Achilles heel. I was like, I need to go. This is drastic times call for drastic measures. All right. So yeah, I've got like 2 weeks left. So who knows what's gonna happen after that. But yeah.
Aw, well,
I've been
that's
on
so
my
nice that you gave
75.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so nice you gave yourself that time and like recognize that. Like
Yeah.
Audrey, what you said earlier, Audrey, like it's like so hard to, give yourself the time to just be by yourself. I'm a serial monogamous, so like it is,
Yep.
it's so hard. So I commend you for doing it. I love that. 75 queer.
Thanks.
Slay.
I don't know what I thought you were gonna say after saying 75 queer. Not dating masks for 75 days wasn't at all what I thought the answer was gonna be, but I love that as an answer.
I have like notes in my journal. I was like, I need to do 75 hard, but I need it to be my own version. And I was like, okay, what's it gonna look like? I was like, gallon of water a day. We can keep that one. We can keep that one. Work out twice a day. Absolutely not. We're crossing that. Like I was going through the 75 hard challenge and I was like, okay, I got to do it for myself. And I was like, no TikTok right before bed because I have a TikTok addiction. I'll just lay there scrolling until my eyes are like shutting. So I was like, I need to not. I know. So that, and then I was like, what else? Yes, masked lesbians. I need a break.
That one right there.
Circled in red ink. Yeah.
It's so fucking funny. Oh my gosh. I love that, making like an own version of 75 hard for yourself. That's like a great idea because I feel like the actual 75 hard, like, I mean, it's pretty intense.
It's too hard for me.
It's too
Yeah.
hard.
My goals each day are like leave my apartment, eat.
No, literally mine was like eat breakfast every day. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in the trenches. I don't need to be working out twice a day. We need something more realistic.
No,
Yes.
100%. Well, and it actually like helps when it's more realistic because I remember like when I was going through a tough time a couple years ago, like, and you really have to like rebuild your life up. And I will never forget like talking with my therapist, and she was like, okay, like, so your responsibilities every day are to get out of your bed, change into different pajamas, go
Yep.
downstairs to your parents' bed in the different pajama. Like, it is really just like
It's
rebuilding
hard.
your life. Yeah, it is. And that's what can, I think, at least when I'm on TikTok and, people are, making these like grandiose,
grind.
yeah, like, I'm gonna do all of this. Like, I'm like, it
My
triggers
5
me
to
because,
9 before my 9 to 5.
Mhm.
yeah,
Ma'am, I'm sleeping. No.
ma'am, I am asleep until 8:45 before I log on at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
Like, let me be fucking real with you.
I now want you to make my 5 to 9 before 9 to 5, except for it's just a video of you asleep in the dark.
Perfect. I'm on it. On it. You'll see it tomorrow.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny because I like get triggered by it. Like, I see it and it looks so like, it's like this like
Mhm.
thing. It looks so good and you're like, it's shiny and amazing. And then I try and do it and I'm like, fuck no, this shit does not work.
No.
I don't
No.
know if y'all have ever gotten those, but I sometimes when a TikTok comes up and I'll get one of those and I'll like feel really like pinched by it. Like it'll pinch
Yeah.
something on me of like, this is a reference to like an acting technique, but like there's
Mhm.
a pinch and like pinches hurt more when they're pinched on a bruise. And I'll have something that pinches me on a bruise. And then it'll cut to someone stitching it and being like, this video is not for you. This is on your For You page. Like, no, this video is not
Not
meant
you.
for you. Don't just go do it. No, not you. It's not meant for you. Ignore this. So I'll often get those of like, you can do it. If I can do it, I can do it. And then it comes to someone being like, this isn't you. No, wasn't meant for you. You're depressed. Don't go do it.
Our algorithm knows us. I love it.
Truly, truly. Before we get to our final question, I wanted to ask you, from this experience, like, is there a piece of advice that you would give to somebody going through a breakup right now?
Ooh, did I feel like I wrote something down about this. I think my biggest piece of advice, and I feel like this is counterintuitive to what most people would say, is to focus on play. Like, it has been one of the biggest things that has helped me in realizing that when you go through something so traumatic and hard, this is not just breakups, anything that's super hard going on in your life, we forget to have fun, and we forget how short life is. Like, we're on this planet it literally flies by, and we're not meant to just wake up, go to work, come home, like make dinner, like mindlessly scroll on TikTok while that's fun. But like, that's not what our everyday has to be. And so for me, I've just been trying to focus on having as much fun as possible, and not in a way that is like avoiding your feelings. I still am actively journaling, and when I want to cry, I cry. When I want to be angry, I like try to, get my anger out in healthy ways. But I think what is so often forgot is the play aspect. And
Yeah.
it helps you remember that we're all just silly little humans trying to figure out things, because we're all completely fucking clueless about what life is, So I would say
Literally.
play.
I love that. I love that. All right. So, final question for you. We ask everybody this. Can you tell us a recent time that you felt clueless?
It can be big or small. It can be as big as like, what am I doing in my life? Or like, hey, how often are you meant to empty your vacuum cleaner?
Oh, big or small. My whole life right now. I feel like, I don't know if that's so general, but I am completely clueless every single day right now. Up until May 1st, when my life blew up, I had everything planned. I am such a type A person. I knew, we're getting married. We're, on this date, we are moving abroad in May 2024. We are, I had my life planned out. And
Wow.
now that none of that is there, I am completely clueless, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. But I have never been so grateful for it. I've never been so happy just figuring out, like, it's kind of a rebirth in a way of, I can do whatever I want with my life. How am I going to do it?
Yeah.
How am I going to take this opportunity? So right now.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Love that. There are so many times where I think both of us have experienced like every day is like, what the
Yeah.
actual fuck am I doing? Like,
Yes.
I think it totally comes in waves where there's like times where it's like literally every day. And then there's times where you're like,
Yeah.
I feel the soothe sail. And then it's like, oh, it's happening again. So I feel you. I feel you. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was so incredible.
Thank you guys so much. You both are wonderful. And
Oh,
Thank you.
thank
so happy
you.
to be here.
Yay.
Where
Go,
can
Audrey. I
people
see you
find
saying it.
you? Where can people find you? What's your like ats? Where should they follow, listen, etc.? Your story.
Yes. My TikTok and my Instagram handles are the same. It's at Sydney Cason, but with 2 N's on the end, because for some reason Sydney Cason's already taken. I don't know how many of us there are, but yes, Sydney Cason with 2 N's.
Incredible. And you know that you guys can find us on Instagram at Completely Fucking Clueless.
And on TikTok and YouTube at completely FCKING Clueless.
Slay. Have an amazing Tuesday, everybody. Have an amazing week. And don't forget to be motherfucking clueless. Bye.
Bye.
This has been a 58 Ember production. For more shows, please visit the 58 Ember channel, 58ember.com, or find us at 58 Ember Media on socials.